we're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Happy Saturday, one and all. It is 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight, your perfect Saturday night in. In my big opinion, cyclists think the highway code doesn't apply to them. It's time for bikes to have a registration number so they can be accountable at last. Look at that numpty. Also, has poor old Hugh Edwards been hung out to dry? Is it time that he was back on the telly? In the big story, was Cliff Richard right to fat shame Elvis Presley? And with Nike now designing extra-wide clothes for young people, is it time to put Britain's fat kids on a crash diet? And looking forward to this in my take at 10, the BBC licence fee is predicted to reach almost £200 in the next 5 years. Is it worth the money? I'll give my verdict shortly, and it's not for the faint-hearted. I can tell it's going to be a special show tonight. We've got some amazing guests, amazing pundits, some very noisy stories to debate. Plus, we've got a dream team the other side of the camera. Lottie's back in the house, and producer Greg has returned. He's been in Mexico. I don't know why, but I'm assuming sex tourism or narcotics. So, 2 hours of big opinion, big debate, and lots of entertainment along the way. You've made the right choice for a Saturday night. I'll see you after the news with Aaron Armstrong.
Thank you very much indeed, Mark. Yes, good evening to you. Aaron Armstrong here in the GB newsroom. The Israeli military says there's been significant progress in efforts to secure the release of further hostages held by Hamas following an earlier delay. Hamas halted proceedings after accusing Israel of violating the terms of the truce agreement by not allowing aid trucks to enter northern Gaza. That's now been resolved following mediation by Egypt and Qatar. And the IDF says hostage relief efforts are now underway. Hamas is expected to transfer 13 Israeli hostages to the Red Cross at the Rafah border crossing with Egypt. 7 foreign nationals will also be released. And if the exchange goes ahead, Israel has agreed to release 39 Palestinians from this prison in the West Bank. It comes on day 2 of a 4-day pause in fighting. Meanwhile, a 4-year-old girl, released yesterday after being held captive by Hamas, told her father she dreamed of coming home. Raz Asher, her 2-year-old sister Aviv, and her mother Doron were released and reunited with Yoni Asher on Friday on the first stage of the Israel-Hamas deal. Well, 24 hostages were freed in total yesterday. A number of those were taken to the Schneider Children's Hospital, where authorities say they've been responding well to medical treatment. The Met Police has arrested 18 people during pro-Palestinian protests in London. 4 have been arrested on suspicion of distributing material likely to stir racial hatred. 2 on suspicion of supporting a prescribed terrorist organisation. The arrest took place as tens of thousands of people marched through central London calling for a ceasefire. The former police officer convicted of murdering George Floyd's been stabbed at a prison in Arizona. That's according to reports in the United States. It's understood Derek Chauvin survived the attack by another inmate on Friday, but has been seriously injured. It comes days after the Supreme Court rejected his appeal. The 47-year-old argued he hadn't received a fair trial. Mr. Chauvin is serving multiple sentences for George Floyd's death in 2020, which led to widespread protests against police brutality and racism. And it's likely to be another cold night, perhaps the coldest of the autumn season later, with sub-zero temperatures across many parts of the country. It comes after many areas experienced their first frost of the year, with temperatures well below freezing last night. Across northwestern England and in the south, temperatures could go as low as -7, -4 in parts of rural Wales. The Met Office is also predicting snow, which could fall next week. We are live across the UK on TV, digital radio and on your smart speaker too. That's it for the moment. Now back to Mark.
My thanks to Aaron Armstrong, who I happen to know is wearing his thermals tonight. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, cyclists think the highway code doesn't apply to them. It's time for bikes to have a registration number so they can be accountable at last. In the big story was Cliff Richard right to fat shame Elvis Presley. And with Nike now designing extra wide clothes for young people, is it time to put Britain's fat kids on a crash diet? My Mark Meets guest is Britain's leading expert on political cartoons, Tim Benson, who is what's known as a cartoonologist. Fascinating stuff. You'll love some of the cartoons we've got for you. Looking forward to this in My Take at 10 in just an hour's time. The BBC licence fee is predicted to reach almost £200 a year within 5 years. Is it worth the money? I'll give my verdict shortly, and that one is not for the faint-hearted. Also, Harry and Meghan's favourite journalist has written a tell-all book which threatens more chaos and bad headlines for the royal family. We'll get the inside story from the Queen of US royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Plus, in a busy show, we've got tomorrow's front pages at 10:30 with 3 top pundits who are off message and off the script. They haven't been told what to say and they don't follow a narrative. Tonight, Chloe Dobbs, Aidan McGee and Christopher Biggins. Tonight I'll be asking the pundits, has poor old Hugh Edwards been hung out to dry? Is it time he was back on telly? And are vegans a menace? Plus, the most important part of the show, your emails. They come straight to my laptop, mark@gbnews.com. And this show has a golden rule. Do you know what that rule is? It's a very strict rule. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. So, a big 2 hours to come, your perfect Saturday night in. It's brass monkeys outside, so get the kettle on, and let's start with my big opinion. We've all been the victim of a lycra-clad cyclist, haven't we? Flying past you as they mount the pavement, causing a near collision, as they jump the red lights, or dart in front of you as you attempt to cross the road. Don't take my word for it. Here's an example of the madness that happens on Britain's roads.
Oh, it's been a bit speedy today. It's been a bit too speedy. Oh.
Awful stuff. Both at fault on that one, I'd say. But some of these cyclists are seriously fit, and they've got the horsepower in their calf muscles to really speed along, making them a hazard to pensioners and children in particular, as well as, of course, to themselves. And now they're motorised. Even an overweight, unfit 50-something bloke who's ate too many burgers and drunk too many pints of Guinness has now been transformed into Lance Armstrong. Not thanks to steroids or blood transfusions, but a bloody great motor and battery on his electric bike. Electric bikes and scooters are extraordinarily powerful and fast. And whilst motorcyclists like me have to do a test, wear a helmet and pay vast insurance, people on electric bikes doing similar speeds pay nothing. Which is why I was delighted to read that the former Met Police Commissioner, Lord Hogan Howe, has said bicycles should have number plates so that dangerous cyclists can be caught. He said cyclists were entirely unaccountable and some kind of identification on the bike could help reduce dangerous riding. The Telegraph report government figures that show between 2016 and 2021, 2,500 pedestrians were injured after being hit by pedal bikes. This included 15 fatalities. Currently, a cyclist who kills can be prosecuted and jailed for 2 years under a Victorian law for furious and wanton driving. And that law was drawn up for horse-drawn carriages. However, motorists face a life sentence if charged and convicted of the same crime. Now, I don't want to discourage cycling. I take the unfashionable view that the cycle lanes, if used, are a great addition to our transport infrastructure. Cycling is good for your health, it produces zero pollution, and it's true that a bicycle has the potential to do far less damage than any motor vehicle. In many ways, we should be thankful for cyclists. They're responsible for cleaner air, they're keeping themselves fit, and any city dominated by bicycles, such as Cambridge or Amsterdam, provides an excellent quality of life for all. But cyclists also benefit from the infrastructure provided, and as many more every year put the pedal to the metal, they should quite literally be saddled with some of the costs. I think cyclists should have some kind of basic insurance policy in case they hurt themselves or someone else. And maybe they should pay a tax for those expensive cycle lanes. Also, bicycles are increasingly being used by criminals for violent crime and robberies. So a national database of registration numbers for each bicycle would drag cycling, kicking and screaming, into the 21st century. It would make cyclists accountable at long last. Now, most cyclists are brilliant. I've got friends and family members who have given up driving, using the bus or trains long ago for the freedom that two wheels delivers. But the popularity of this form of transport must be matched by some responsibility too. Many cyclists have a mind of their own and simply do what they want to do. Traffic laws and the highway code don't apply to them, putting all of us at risk. So it's time for a national registration scheme of bicycles. And for those that don't like it, on your bike. Your reaction, Mark, at gbnews.com. They come straight to my email. I'll get to your emails very, very shortly. But first, let's hear from tonight's top pundits. Political commentator Chloe Dobbs, broadcaster and journalist Aidan McGee, and showbiz royalty, actor and comedian, and a man that looks excellent in lycra, Christopher Biggins. Biggins, have you ever been at the wrong end of a bicycle?
Many times. And what what annoys me most, and I think without doubt they should have a license plate. I mean, that is, and they should be insured. I mean, it's very important because they have their own rules. Like, for instance, I'm convinced this is a rule that I break every day, is a zebra crossing, and as a motorist, I approach the zebra crossing, there are people crossing, and then cyclists drive or ride across it. Now, I don't think that is in the highway code. I think if you push it over, you walk and push it, that is fine. But riding it over, cycling it over, is really wrong. So I'm really strongly think that cyclists, they have everything they do is wrong. I mean, and they get so aggressive with you. They really do. They sort of shout at you, and they put fingers up at you, and they do everything. I mean, almost, if they could, they throw things at a motorist. They're hideous.
Well, definitely, and they think they own the roads, Chloe, and they don't think, many of them, that the highway code relates to them.
I am going to disagree with some of what you've said, I'm afraid. There are many cyclists that really grind my gears. if you pardon me. I've had people swear at me. I've had people put the middle finger up on me. I both cycle and drive. I've been on both sides. But I really think that forcing them to have number plates and adding a load of bureaucracy will push so many people out of cycling. Now, I agree that there are plenty of cyclists on the road who just don't look where they're going. I see plenty of people going around with both of their AirPods in, completely unaware of their surroundings. But I think that the better approach to solve this would be better education. So when I was in school, I did the bikeability scheme, which many other children have done, and that was incredible. They taught you so much about road safety. You had to pass the qualification, and then you would have your badge, and you knew that you know how to operate on the road as a cyclist.
Did they teach you how to swear at BMW drivers?
They didn't.
A good life skill.
They didn't teach me that, but they did teach me a lot of good stuff. You know, as they say, you don't know how much you don't know until you start learning. And when I started learning that, I realised, oh, you know, I don't know what the appropriate hand signals are in different situations. I don't know exactly how to approach a roundabout as a cyclist, exactly how to approach a junction as a cyclist. They teach you all of that, so maybe they could make it a requirement on the national curriculum that children do this. I don't think that adding a load of bureaucracy is really necessary. And another thing that I will say
I'll just come in there, though. I think it was on the national curriculum at one time. I did a cycling proficiency test in March 1988 and I failed.
Oh no, wouldn't let you on the roads then. Okay, if it's not on the national curriculum, it should be added. What I also want to say is that as a cyclist, if you do skip a red light, most of the time, the risk you're taking there, you're putting yourself at risk. Whereas if as a car driver, you skip a red light and you hit someone, potentially you could kill them, severely injure them. Whereas usually as a cyclist, I know, okay, if I'm going across a red light in the middle of the night and nobody's there, if I get hit, I'm probably the one that's going to be hurt. You know, that's a risk that you're taking. I don't think it is as much of a big deal as a car skipping a red light. Now, you mentioned pedestrians being hurt, but the figures there, you showed 15 people killed between 2016 and 2021, pedestrians killed. That is tiny compared to the 1,700 people that die in car accidents every year. You know, is it really that big of a problem? As annoying as cyclists can be from time to time.
Well, I quoted 2,500 incidents with pedestrians, including serious injury and 15 sad deaths. But I think that's a drop in the ocean. I think that's the tip of the iceberg, to mix my metaphors, Aidan. What I'm really worried about now is these electric bicycles. They have an electric motor on them, Aidan. These are vehicles, not push bikes.
I want to take you back in time, Mark, and my panel guests here. I want to take you back to 2012. I was driving through Islington in North London, through upper streets, and I settled at a red light. And I looked around me, and I was just surrounded by cyclists. I was on the peloton, effectively. I was Bradley Wiggins in a silver Ford Mondeo. And I felt a little bit suffocated, if I may say. I've always felt that councils have used cyclists to try and not necessarily run motorists off the road, but certainly in areas like Islington, I felt they've been used to kind of for expediency purposes, to kind of intimidate drivers or to make me think it's not really worth driving through town anymore because it's just so difficult to actually get off the mark. By the time all the cyclists had gone past me, the light was virtually on amber again and back to red, having been on green. Until recently, I was doing 60,000 miles a year. So most of that was motorway driving. I didn't encounter cyclists that often, but I do find them aggressive from time to time. I have been challenged to a fight on, I think it was Chelsea Bridge somewhere, and that was about 2014, actually. I declined. Thankfully, the light turned green and I was able to pass through. But in terms of the identification issue, I felt that strongly for a good 10, 12 years. I think a reg plate, I don't think it would incur that much bureaucracy in a digital age. I don't think that would be a difficult thing to do. And until you do that...
I mean, a lot of people have, like, 5 bikes, right? You've got a road bike, you've got a mountain bike, you've got road bikes with different width tyres.
People have more than one car. I've got more than one car.
Yeah, exactly. People have many cars.
But do you have 5 cars? I don't think that many people have 5 cars.
I don't think that many people have 5 bikes.
There you go. What do you think? Should they be insured? Should they be...
I think they should be insured. I think they should be insured for their own, as much as anything else, for their own safety. I know that if I go near a cyclist, then Even if I'm not at fault, there's no way in the world I'm going to win that court case. Absolutely not,
No.
because they're untouchable. And if they're wearing helmets as well, they're not easy to identify in any other way. I think a reg plate is not a bad way to do it. And in a digital age, I don't think it's a difficult thing to do.
Biggins, I know you were going to ejaculate there, and let me help you. Family show, be careful. We've all had a drink. The issue you've got, Biggins, is that if there's a collision involving a cyclist, even if it's their fault, you get the blame when the cops turn up.
Absolutely. We are the guilty ones, the motorists on the street. And what annoys me, I want to ask you, Clay, when you're on a cycle and you come across a traffic light and we're all there, the motorist is there because he can't move, and they very rarely do move because the light is red, and do you go through that light?
I rarely do after I was pulled over by the police for going over pedestrian crossing at about 5 in the morning when there was not a pedestrian in sight. So I'm constantly looking behind me, looking for the police.
There you go. I tell you what, you
since
see...
then, so they do go after the cyclists.
It's all coming out now.
And they'll go after you for not having lights on your bike as well. So the police, if they step in more of people not having lights on the bike, maybe they'll behave better. But I do agree that there is this sort of war on motorists, not just with this, but with ULEZ and all sorts of things. Motorists are seen as devils when that's really not the case.
I think there's a way to coexist, though, Mark. There has to be a way forward.
Yeah.
A way forward, nicely done. Well, listen, folks, a very busy show to come. I'll be dealing with the BBC at 10 o'clock. That is in exactly 42 minutes' time. My take at 10, you won't want to miss it, box office stuff. But coming up next in the big story, was Cliff Richard right to fat shame Elvis Presley? And with Nike now designing extra-wide clothes for young people, is it time to put Britain's fat kids on a crash diet? Plus, in an exclusive poll, we've been asking, should cyclists have number plates? The results are in. I shall reveal all next.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Acquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, a big reaction to my big opinion. I think that cyclists should have number plates and insurance. Well, you've responded strongly on email, mark@gbnews.com. Mark has said, good evening. Only today, I witnessed a pedestrian having to step into the road to get out of the way of a lunatic on an electric scooter who was approaching her at 20 miles an hour. David says, hi, Mark. I've been hit by cyclists on a number of occasions, and all the cyclists did was check their bikes before seeing how I was. Stephen said, hi, Mark. Roads weren't built for bikes. Bikes are not built for roads. Though cyclists would disagree. Bikes on pavements being naturally slowed by pedestrians would be much safer, says Stevie. Well, look, it's all about opinions. Do get yours over to me, mark@gbnews.com. We've been conducting an exclusive Mark Dolan Tonight People's Poll. We've been asking, should all cyclists have obligatory number plates? The results are in. 77.4% say yes, and 22.6% say no.
Yes!
That's a landslide and another victory for Biggins, who has his finger on the pulse of the nation. OK, lots to get through, but before we get to the big story and Cliff Richard, let's head over to the news desk.
Thanks, Mark, and we bring you some breaking news from the Middle East, some positive news as well. Hamas has reportedly handed 13 Israeli hostages and 7 foreign nationals over to the Red Cross, and they are on their way to the Rafah border crossing. That is the crossing in southern Gaza with Egypt. It's being reported widely, including Reuters news agency. They've cited Egyptian and Qatari sources. The live picture you're seeing is the Rafah crossing, where we're expecting that handover to take place. It's been confirmed, as we mentioned, by the Israeli military, by Hamas, also by Egypt and Qatar, who've been mediating on the hostage release deal. Now, there was a delay to this process earlier, a short delay. Hamas temporarily suspended the agreement because it said Israel was not sticking to the terms of the agreement that they had, the terms of the truce, and the Israeli Defence Force was not letting aid trucks into northern Gaza from that Rafah crossing. Well, Qatar and Egypt stepped in, that was resolved, and it looks like the exchange will go ahead, and the terms will be along these lines: 13 Israeli hostages in exchange for 39 Palestinian prisoners who are being held in a jail in the West Bank. We expect that to go ahead, as it did indeed yesterday, the exact same numbers. Palestinians will be released. It comes on day 2 of what is a 4-day pause in the fighting. We understand it will be women and minors, the Palestinians, from that jail in the West Bank, just like it was yesterday. And the numbers were exactly the same yesterday. 13 Israelis in exchange for 39 Palestinians. 11 Thai nationals were released yesterday. That was part of a separate deal between Thailand and Hamas. And as I mentioned, just day 2 of this 4-day pause, although under the terms of the original agreement, for every 10 more Israeli hostages that are released, well, the IDF say they will add an extra day pause to the fighting. So we hope to see many more hostages released in the coming days, and the pause, the ceasefire, the temporary ceasefire could go on for some time. But for the moment, we understand that that is now happening. 13 Israeli hostages being handed over to the Red Cross at the Rafah crossing. They'll go into Egypt soon, along with 7 foreign nationals. That's the breaking news. Back to you now, Mark.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Well, it's time now for the big story, and Cliff Richard has sparked outrage in a fat-shaming row about Elvis Presley. Appearing on ITV's This Morning with Dermot O'Leary and Alison Hammond, Cliff Richard, who was there to publicise his new book about his amazing career in pop, said he refused a photo with Elvis on the grounds of his weight. Take a listen.
Did you ever meet Elvis?
At the end of the interview, though, I said, can we put it off? Because he'd put on a lot of weight.
Oh, right.
And I thought, if I'm having a photograph taken with him and it's going to be hanging on my refrigerator, he's got to look good.
OK, well, lively stuff. Let's speak to the weight loss guru, the man behind the website Fatnosis, which has helped many people lose weight, Steve Miller, and a man who knows Cliff Richard very well, my top pundit tonight, showbiz legend Christopher Biggins. Let me start with you, Steve. Do you think that Cliff Richard was guilty of fat shaming? OK, we're just getting the audio to Steve. Just bear with us for that, if you don't mind. Let me talk to you, Biggins, whilst we get the line to Steve properly established. First of all, your reaction to what your friend Cliff Richard had to say on This Morning.
Well, I think, you know, when you have a hero, now, undoubtedly, Elvis Presley was Cliff's hero. He wasn't a pop star when he first heard Cliff Richard. I think he heard him in a car, someone's car radio, and they tried to run out of the car to find out what this wonderful voice was. And, of course, Elvis Presley in those early days was a very, very handsome man. And I think he was just gorgeous, and anyone would have wanted a photograph. He then became grotesque. He then became not only fat, but he became, the whole image went. There was something that went really bad with him. And I think then, Cliff, what he meant was he didn't want really that image on his fridge.
Yeah.
And I think it was quite innocent.
He wanted to remember Elvis in the best possible light.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's like all of us, I suppose. You know, there are certain people who like to be photographed with.
My hero, Elton John, another friend of yours, met Elvis in the mid-70s, and he was bloated, he was ill, he was sickly, and he had hair dye trickling down his cheek. And Elton said he'd rather not have met him under those circumstances.
Absolutely, and I think that's absolutely right, and that's what Cliff meant.
OK, well, let's get the views now of Steve Miller. We've put 10p in the meter. And, Steve, your reaction to this massive showbiz storm?
Well, I think it's completely blown out of proportion is the first thing to say. First of all, we've got wars around the world. We've got a cost of living crisis. And what are we talking about? Someone that answers a question on a chat show. He told the truth. I mean, listen, and he wasn't fat shaming. He was just telling the truth. The other thing to say is, I mean, if he'd have gone on the sofa and said, you know, it started singing something like Confactulations, you know, the song, then maybe that would have been different. But I'm sorry. Listen, he answered the question, and the outrage came from many of the namby-pamby lot, especially those in London, may I say, who think that every time you're talking about somebody's weight, you're fat-shaming. I think he just made a comment. He just wanted to remember him as he was, and if he was having a photo with him, then fair enough. He wanted a photo with him and looking healthy and well. I just think it was blown completely out of proportion.
I've got to say, Steve, while I've got you and Biggins with me, I saw a story in the paper today, while staying on the issue of weight loss. Nike have developed a range of clothing with added width for larger children. Does this not suggest we've got a problem here? Steve?
Well, we know we've got, yeah, of course, we know we've got are we using euphemisms again, aren't we? You know, added width. What it means is kids are getting fatter and more parents have got fat kids. And the message here is parents have got to start taking more responsibility. We've got great parents who do great work with their kids, but we've got some pretty awful role models as parents who frankly prefer to stuff a burger in their mouth along with some chips, doing it the same with their child that's dangerously overweight. You know, let's not be unkind to the children. They've got to have clothes to run about in and to wear. You know, let's do that. But the message here is, if your child is too fat, sort it as a parent.
Biggins, before we wrap things up, apologies to both of you, a slightly shorter item because of that breaking news from Aaron Armstrong. Can I ask you, Chris, do you think there's a danger that Cliff Richard is going to be cancelled for these comments?
No way. No, I hope not. I mean, if he is, it's a disgrace. No, he's a huge fan base. People liked... I went to see his concert recently, and the theatre was 3,000 people full, and they love him. No, this is not going to harm him at all.
Cliff Richard, not only a pop icon, but somebody that's looked after himself for many years, Steve. He should be a role model rather than being condemned.
Well, he's always looked pretty good, hasn't he? And I know he's had his, battles with what's happened to him in the past and different things reported and all that sort of thing. And he's managed to pull through all that. But yeah, I mean, for a man of 80, 81, whatever he is, he's doing pretty well, isn't he? And he's keeping himself very slim and fit. So yeah, I think, good on him. And all of this extra stuff about, upsetting Alison Hammond, people were saying on Twitter, listen, I'm sure that Alison Hammond has got a thick skin.
Well, that's the problem. Biggins, do we need to have a conversation about the country's waistline?
No, not at all. And I agree with Steve. What's going on in this world is far more important than what Cliff Richard said about his idol being too fat to have a photograph with. It's rubbish. Why people are talking like that, I don't know. Just look around you. Everything is appalling. It's disgraceful what's going on in this world.
Most definitely. Well, listen, I enjoyed the debate. I'm a huge fan of Cliff Richard. By the way, big fan of Dermot O'Leary and Alison Hammond as well. Hugely talented woman, Alison Hammond, beautiful lady. And you know what? This morning has got back on its feet. And look, we're talking about it, which is what these TV shows are all about, including mine. Steve Miller, Fatnosis. That's where people can go to lose weight. Is that right?
Oh, they can. They can look me up. I'm spread everywhere like jam on the toast.
Well, I'd eat up every last crumb. Thank you, Steve Miller. Thank you to the brilliant Christopher Biggins, who's back with us shortly. But coming up with tonight's top pundits, has poor old Hugh Edwards been hung out to dry? Is it time for him to be back on the telly? We'll debate that in 2 minutes.
Earlier.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you 3.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
I've got to say, the reaction to the Big Opinion has pretty much broken my laptop. I've had so many emails about whether cyclists should have a number plate like cars and motorcycles. Linda says, hi Mark, in my experience, since the new highway code changes, the cyclists seem to think they are untouchable. Driving behind them is frustrating, to say the least. This from Tam, who says, hi Mark, bicycles should by law have a bell fitted, can warn pedestrians who might not hear it and get injured. Andrew says, hi Mark, I had a very near miss with a woman on a bike with a child on the back. It was dark and she had no lights. How I missed her, I will never know. Let's get some identification for the cyclists. Look, I could just spend the rest of the evening reading your cycling emails, but do keep them coming. On Cliff Richard, was he right to fat shame Elvis? How dare Cliff, the cheap version of Elvis, make those comments, says Jackie. And on Nike have now got a range of sportswear that's wider for kids, such as the obesity crisis. I think letting your children get fat, says Terry, is a form of child abuse. It's out of control in the UK. Lots more of that to come, but it's being reported that one of the BBC's biggest stars, Hugh Edwards, is set to step down from the organisation after an internal inquiry. It comes after the BBC suspended Hugh Edwards in July, following claims he paid thousands of pounds for sexually explicit images. However, whilst not all of the allegations have been denied, including alleged inappropriate behaviour with BBC staff, police have found no evidence of criminal wrongdoing by the presenter. So has Hugh Edwards been hung out to dry? Is it time he was back on telly, his only crime being a complicated love life? Or are his actions beyond the pale for a man who is the face of BBC News? We'll get my pundits in on that very shortly. But first, let's speak to former BBC producer John Mayer, who helped to create Question Time 40 years ago. He has since edited 55 books, 5 on the BBC. He's now working on a book, How Do We Pay for the Beeb in the Future, which is out in February. John, congratulations on the book. I look forward to interviewing you about that in the new year.
Do you think would you like to write for it?
What was that?
Would you like to write for the book? Would you like to write for the book? You have opinions on the BBC?
I would absolutely love to contribute to that book. Most definitely, John. So get in touch with the team after the show. Tell me, do you think that Hugh Edwards should be back on the box?
Mark, first of all, as they say on American TV, thank you for having me. I mean, this is a no-brainer. This is a complete no-brainer. Hugh Edwards is damaged property. Who is going to put him in front of a screen on a respectable programme? His reputation is absolutely shot. Poor man. Poor man. But he has no reputation now, so he has to go off and do something else. You know, that's the price of fame. If you've got a face and a name, as you may find out, you have to be very, very careful what you do, because if you step out of line in the modern world with mobile phones and everything else, somebody's going to see you doing it. I was saying earlier on that Frank Boff. Do you remember Frank Boff? Poor Frank Boff. Had a liking for young girls and cocaine. He lasted about a day after the news of the world exposed him. And I recall, I used to work on Nationwide, and I was once with Hugh Scully in Savoy, and he was very drunk. And I said, Hugh, don't do this. You've got a face. Somebody will notice you. Hugh Edwards is damaged property. But what I do believe is if the BBC wipes his voice off of archive, they're bonkers. He's done his work. He's done his work professionally. Let that be his legacy.
Interesting stuff. I mean, he hasn't broken any laws, has he? He just has a racy private life.
He's brought the corporation into a little bit of disrepute, and his wife admitted that as much. People will not take him seriously. You can't put Hugh Edwards on a royal occasion now, can you? This story is all about him negotiating his payoffs, as you realise. So his lawyers are feeding stories, and he's not broken the law. That it's his friends in inverted commas are saying how angry he is. He can be angry as he like, but he cannot appear in a news studio again. GB News, as you well know, yanks people off air when they start to bring the station into disrepute. So why shouldn't the BBC?
Yes, and I've got no doubt, I could get yanked off at some point if I said the wrong thing, because that's the responsibility of being on the national airwaves, John. John, do stay with us. Let me bring in my top pundits as well. Political commentator Chloe Dobbs, sports broadcaster Aidan McGee, and showbiz legend Christopher Biggins. Aidan, what exactly has Hugh Edwards done wrong? The allegations are that he quite enjoys the sight of a cock and balls. It's not against the law, is it? We've all done it.
It's not against the law, but we're making an assumption that bringing the organisation into disrepute involves breaking the law. I would say that it's not quite as clear-cut as that. Is his behaviour befitting of somebody I expect to be the flagship newscaster of our national broadcaster? I would say definitely not. I think, as your guest John says, I do think he's damaged goods, and I do think it would be very difficult for him now to read the news even with any credibility. And also, it's not like he's irreplaceable. I mean, yes, he's regarded as a journalist, but I've only ever seen him just read the news off a teleprompter or an auto cue.
No, he's
I think he's sorry. Go on, John.
What were you going to say, John?
He's done lots of royal stuff. No, that's not. He's not just a gob on sticks. He was a lot more than that. No, he's done other things. But you're right. It's all about trust. The people have to watch the telly and think, I trust what that man's saying, and they won't trust him now.
I just wonder whether an apology would be enough, Chloe Dobbs.
I don't think it will be enough. I think generally speaking, when you apologise, the mob comes for you even more. This is a difficult one, I have to say. I'm a bit conflicted about this because I do believe in the principle of innocent until proven guilty, and the police have not said that they haven't found any evidence of him committing a crime. I would like to see if we find out what was in that report. So when they say that he sent messages to people who worked at the BBC that made them feel uncomfortable, what is that? I mean, a message that makes you feel uncomfortable in today's day and age could be just misgendering someone. But I mean, we know that the BBC has a culture of covering things up. We saw it with Jimmy Savile and others. So, I'm tempted to think it may be another case of that. And he may be guilty, but I mean, as we pointed out, he's had a long career. It's not like he's really getting the short end of the stick, ending his time at the BBC now. He has had a long time there. He's had a good career. He should be grateful for that.
But also, Mark, you can get any of us can get sacked for saying the wrong thing. It doesn't mean we're breaking the law, but if it spells the end for our career and it makes our careers difficult, then I don't see why Hugh Edwards shouldn't be held to the same standard.
Yeah, I mean, obviously trying to get hold of the short end of the stick is what got him into trouble in the first place. But, John, is there a potential for Hugh Edwards outside of the BBC?
Look, the commercial world is there, Mark. He can go open fates, chair conferences, 10,000 a day. But, I mean, one thing GB News could do is push the BBC to reveal that report it into his behaviour, because public body, they've done a report, and I think that report should be public. I'm sure it's legally safe because it's been called over by lawyers. So, say to the BBC, all right, let's see it. We know the man is going, and also, by the way, let's see how much he gets paid off for, because he's on $435,000 a year. Which is people at GB News are not on that. I don't think. Not even Jacob Rees-Mogg.
I'm not sure what Jacob's on, but he's worth every penny. Briefly, John, before I get to Biggins for the last word, how much could it cost the BBC to axe Hugh Edwards? Could it be in excess of £1 million?
I have no idea. Look, I'm not a lawyer nor an accountant, but I would have thought he's had 6 months of pay already for doing nothing. So I would have thought probably very little, because actually he's not leaving in glory. He's not leaving covered in roses, covered in flowers. So they could probably say, look, all right, we'll pay you to the end of the year and then goodbye. And by the way, we'll employ you occasionally sometime in the future. But he has to go off and make a living somewhere else now.
Biggins, briefly, a couple of seconds. What's next for Hugh Edwards? OnlyFans or worst case scenario, GB News?
Well, I think probably even worse than that is I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here next year. But
so right.
I think the thing is, I'd like to agree with Chloe for a minute, is the fact that he's had the most fantastic career. Let him finish on that. Let him retire. I don't know what age he is.
62.
62. Well, it's a very good age to retire. He must have some money set aside. He can do The Jungle. He won't do it, I'm sure. But, I think
he will.
Do you think he will?
I think it's a great idea you've just come up with. Well, I think you've put some ideas in some producers' heads.
Well, they probably will ask him, but
Nigel Farage got 1.5 million. Why shouldn't he?
Exactly.
Fair enough. Look, the clock's against us. John, we always love having you on the show. Let me know about the details of your book, and we'll catch up soon. My thanks to former top BBC producer John Mayer. Next up, really looking forward to my Mark Meets guest. It's a bit special. It's a bit political as well. So find out after this. Oh, can I do the poll as well, Greg? Yeah, let's do the poll. In an exclusive Mark Dolan Tonight People's Poll, we've been asking, was Cliff Richard right to fat shame Elvis Presley? The results are in. I'll reveal all next. Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Really excited about my take at 10. In just 10 minutes' time, I'll be dealing with the BBC. In 5 years' time, 200 quid a year for the licence fee. My response. But we've been asking, was Cliff Richard right to fat shame Elvis Presley in a Mark Dolan Tonight People's Poll? The results are in. And 62.2% back Sir Cliff and say no, he was not right. Sorry, they've rejected him. They say he wasn't right. 37.8% say yes, he was right to comment on Elvis's bulging waistline. It's time now for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of showbiz, politics and beyond. Tonight, Britain's leading expert on political cartoons, Tim Benson, who's what's known as a cartoonologist, and he joins me now. Tim, what a treat to have you on the show. You are a historian of political cartoons. What is the purpose of a political cartoon?
Generally, I imagine it's to inform, educate and amuse the reader.
Well, that's what we try to do on Mark Dolan tonight. I guess the attraction of political cartoons, Tim, is the way that so much can be said without the need for words.
Absolutely. Like the old adage where, you know, a picture paints 1,000 words. And the wonderful thing about cartoons, unlike the accompanying text in a newspaper, is the immediacy of the cartoon. That you look at it and within a fraction of a second you've got it, rather than reading a column or an editorial, which obviously takes a bit of time.
Yes, I mean, do some of these cartoonists ever go too far? I believe, Josh, you might have some images of Steve Bell at The Guardian. So let's have a look at that. Now, this is Steve Bell, who no longer works for The Guardian. Characterisation of Priti Patel, then Home Secretary, as some kind of bovine animal. I don't know if it's a bull, but it's unflattering, isn't it?
It is. And cartoons can be cruel. They can be unfair. But I think the problem is with a visual image, it can easily be misinterpreted. And I think the problem with the one you just showed before, Priti Patel, it was when she was accused of bullying. So he's portrayed her as a bull.
Right.
And it has absolutely nothing to do with her being a Hindu or anything else.
Indeed. And then, of course, there was controversy around that particular cartoon that Steve Bell did about the Gaza, Hamas-Israel conflict, which got him the sack from The Guardian. Was that unfair? I'm a free speech advocate. I'm not sure he should have been fired. What do you think?
Absolutely. Well, you know, it's the context that's important here. And in fact, it wasn't the cartoon that got him fired. It was the fact that he retweeted it when they had already said they wouldn't publish it. And he's got form on this. Now, the thing is, he's using a visual metaphor. He's also borrowing, as cartoonists in this country often do, from a cartoon, a very famous cartoon from the past, and reusing it, giving it a contemporary twist. And it's based on an American cartoon by David Levine of President Johnson having just had surgery on his stomach, cutting out North Vietnam from his body. Now, the problem here is that it's not anti-Semitic, but somebody at The Guardian said it was, and they made some reference to Netanyahu wanting his pound of flesh.
Yeah.
I used to the Shylock. So, but it had absolutely nothing to do with that. And it's basically a visual metaphor for Netanyahu saying he was going to carry out surgical strikes on Gaza, which Steve has said, you know, that's basically not possible. And that's why Netanyahu is wearing boxing gloves.
I think it's best, isn't it, if you just don't censor people as long as they haven't broken the law. Producer Lottie created a nice package of Bob Moran's work. He was a great critic of lockdowns and vaccine mandates. How influential are political cartoons? Do they ever influence public opinion or even the outcome of elections, Tim?
No, they don't. They just generally, they confirm our own beliefs and prejudices.
Right.
They don't really change them. Now, you're showing Bob Moran's cartoons. It's a bit of a shame with him because he had quite a promising career on The Telegraph. But during the lockdown, he literally went mad and was saying the most ridiculous things and ended up getting fired from The Telegraph for calling for the verbal and physical abuse of a palliative care doctor, which was absurd. And he was calling politicians evil, which is ridiculous. You can accuse them of being incompetent.
Well, look,
naive or useless.
Obviously, it's all about opinions, and you know, Bob's a very principled guy, and he took a strong view during the pandemic. Like we said, I
He's
think
not principled at all.
He's
a complete lunatic.
Okay,
he
well,
lost
look,
his job on The Telegraph for calling for the verbal and physical abuse of a palliative care doctor.
Well, clearly, that's not something I would support. Tim? On that, we can agree. He may have gone too far, but he certainly had his voice heard through his paintbrush. Tim, before you go, really quickly, just a few seconds, if you can.
He said Britain would have been better off under the Germans. He compared Britain during COVID to Nazi Germany. Had Germany defeated us? The guy's a complete lunatic. And
Okay, well, listen. Tim,
no longer working for the British press.
Okay, Tim, no problem. Listen, I understand you're not a fan. No problem at all. Tim, let's speak again. The clock's against us. You've got a fabulous website. Okay, and the website is original-politicalcartoon.com or Google Tim Benson Cartoons.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online. In the United Kingdom and across the world, this is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10, looking forward to this, the BBC licence fee is predicted to reach almost £200 in the next 5 years. Is it worth the money? I'll give my verdict shortly, and it's not for the faint-hearted. Meanwhile, Harry and Meghan's favourite journalist has written a tell-all book which threatens more chaos and bad headlines for the royal family. We'll get the inside story from the Queen of US Royal Reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits, Chloe Dobbs, Aidan McGee and Christopher Biggins. A packed show, lots to get through. I'll be dealing with the BBC in 2 minutes' time. You won't want to miss it. First, the news headlines and Aaron Armstrong.
Thank you, Mark. Very good evening to you. Aaron Armstrong here in the GB newsroom. The breaking news, 13 Israeli hostages and a number of foreign nationals who've been held by Hamas in Gaza have now been handed over to the Red Cross. These pictures show several Red Cross vehicles at the Rafah border crossing, carrying hostages out of Gaza and into Egypt. The Prime Minister's office says the Israeli hostages are 6 women and 7 children. Now, there's some discrepancy over the number of foreign nationals released who are believed to be Thai. Hamas initially said 7. That number's been revised to 4. 39 Palestinians will be released from an Israeli prison as part of the exchange. A source close to the discussion says it's 33 women and 33 children and 6 women. The delay to the process earlier in the day was resolved thanks to mediation from Egypt and Qatar. This is day 2 of a 4-day pause in fighting. Meanwhile, a 4-year-old girl released yesterday after being held captive by Hamas told her father she dreamed of coming home. Raz Asher, her 2-year-old sister Aviv, and her mother Doron were released and reunited with Yoni Asher in the first stage of the Israel-Hamas deal on Friday. 24 hostages were freed in total. That's 13 Israelis and 11 Thai nationals. A number were taken to the Schneider Children's Hospital, where doctors say they've responded well to treatment. The Met Police has arrested 18 people during pro-Palestinian protests in London. 4 were arrested on suspicion of distributing material likely to stir up racial hatred. A further 2 on suspicion of supporting a prescribed terrorist organisation. The arrest took place as tens of thousands of people marched through the streets of central London, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. And the former police officer convicted of murdering George Floyd has been stabbed at a prison in Arizona, according to reports in the United States. It's understood Derek Chauvin survived the attack by another inmate on Friday, but has been seriously injured. It comes days after the Supreme Court rejected his appeal. The 47-year-old argued he had not received a fair trial. He's serving multiple sentences for George Floyd's death in 2020, which led to widespread protests against police brutality and racism. Well, that's all we have time for the moment. More a little later. Now it's over to Mark.
My thanks to Aaron Armstrong, who returns in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight, your perfect choice for a Saturday night in. Harry and Meghan's favourite journalist has written a tell-all book which threatens more chaos and bad headlines for the royal family. We'll get the inside story from the Queen of US royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield, plus tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits. This evening we have political commentator Chloe Dobbs, broadcaster and sports journalist, the one and only Aidan McGee, and actor and comedy legend Christopher Biggins. Plus, they'll be nominating their headline heroes and backpage zeros of the day. A packed hour to come, and those papers are on the way. But first, my take at 10. This will have you spitting out your tea on a Saturday night. The Office for Budget Responsibility, boffins in thick glasses who crunch the numbers, in other words, are predicting the BBC licence fee will rise to just shy of £200 within the next 5 years. Who's got that kind of money? But if you own a telly, you literally won't be able to plug it in unless you cough up the cash. Old grannies struggling to put food on the table and heat their homes, reliant on TV for company, will be threatened with jail just to keep Gary Lineker in gold cufflinks. Whether or not you think an obligatory tax for the privilege of watching your telly is acceptable, the licence fee itself looks likely to self-implode anyway. Why? Technology. In its latest annual report, the Beeb revealed that the number of people paying the licence fee has dropped by 500,000 in the last year. Because if they're watching on an iPad, a computer or their phone, or even via a smart box connected to their TV, as long as they don't fire up the iPlayer app, they don't have to pay a penny. If you take that figure of 500,000 lost viewers in just a year and project that over a decade, that's 5 million people not invested in the national state broadcaster. At which point, can it even call itself the British Broadcasting Corporation? The Beeb is fast becoming a service only a portion of the population is paying for, watching or listening to. And why would that be? Well, apart from irritation at being shaken down for just a bit under 160 quid to pay their biggest stars and senior management millions, so much of the output is finger-wagging, politically correct drivel. Woke storylines about gender ideology in Casualty. Pro-vaccine propaganda in EastEnders. Right-on comedy that no one watches anymore on Live at the Apollo. And shows like Doctor Who, which are so full of progressive PC nonsense they've been rendered unwatchable. Even the Daleks aren't as terrifying as some of their storylines. The news operation isn't much better, with the Beeb having taken weeks to decide that a group that beheads babies, rapes women and burns people alive are terrorists. When asked whether Hamas were responsible for an arsenal of weapons strategically stored in a Gaza hospital, their Foreign Affairs reporter Jeremy Bowen, who appears to have completely lost the plot, speculated this may not be Hamas and that lots of hospitals are equipped with weapons. Interesting. I'll have a look out for some Kalashnikovs next time I go to A&E with a swollen finger. This is an organisation that offered one-note pandemic coverage, not offering even the slightest debate about whether lockdowns might be a terrible mistake or whether jabbing absolutely everyone was necessary. There's also a strong perception that the organisation was anti-Brexit, holding its nose occasionally to let Nigel Farage go on Question Time for, you know, balance. The BBC complained that their revenue in the last year, thanks to the thousands of people who'd rather watch Netflix or Disney Plus on their laptop, meant their licence fee income fell from 3.8 billion to, wait for it, 3.74 billion. 3.74 billion pounds, and they plead poverty, whilst paying one star on their exclusively digital radio station Six Music £500,000 a year to play records and say, here's Ed Sheeran. The talent aren't just wildly overpaid, they're out of control too. Look at Gary Lineker going on Twitter and linking the Rwanda policy to Nazi Germany. Still in a job, obviously. In the end, the BBC belongs to all of us, but sadly these days, it just doesn't feel that way. It feels like it belongs to the North London chattering classes, signed up to woke progressive politics. Smug, censorious and arrogant, this approach suffuses so much of their output, including the Radio 4 Today programme, which has lost 2 million listeners in the last 3 years. Ultimately, the BBC licence fee is no longer fit for this world. Even their legendary former presenter John Humphreys said it's got to go. Until our national broadcaster creates radio, online and television output for the whole country, and does so on a far more sensible budget with a fairer way of paying for it, it's on borrowed time. Populated by pointless celebrities and not enough masterminds, the BBC is fast becoming Britain's weakest link. I thought I'd spare you the Anne Robinson wink, but there you go. Your reaction, Mark at GBNews.com. Listen, the BBC have got millions of viewers and listeners every week. Many happy customers who love our state broadcaster. So let me know your views, good, bad and indifferent. Let's hear the views now of my top pundits. Political commentator Chloe Dobbs, top broadcaster and journalist Aidan McGee, and actor and broadcaster showbiz royalty Christopher Biggins. And Biggins, you've worked for the Beeb on many an occasion. What do you think about £200 a year? Is that value for money?
No, I don't think it is. You see, I think what should happen is my particular preference is Sky Plus. I mean, I pay a lot of money for that. And I'm happy to pay for the BBC, but if it keeps going up, I'm not. What I think I would pay for is if the radio had a fee for you to listen to the radio, I would probably pay that, because I love the radio. I think it's a wonderful thing in the car, and I love listening to certain programmes at home. But I think we pay so much now for television. All these different channels have to be paid for, all these different companies, and I think we should be able to choose which ones we want to listen to.
Listen, Aidan, I know that BBC 4 is your professional plan B, but what's your reaction to this? This is the Office for Budget Responsibility, who are suggesting that within 5 years it could be as almost £200 annually. Can people afford that?
Well, they can afford it. I'm not actually sure about the question of affordability, but I've got some skin in this race. because I give away a TV licence with every house that I rent out. So I pay this thing multiple times over and over again on the course of a month. So it does irritate me a little bit more than the average person, I would suggest. I remember back in the 90s, there were these adverts that the BBC used to propagate about themselves, and it said the BBC, and some of us might remember this, it said, the BBC has something for everybody. And you know what? Back then, I would say that was quite accurate. It did. Yeah. There was plenty. I mean, I used to stay on a Friday night and watch about 4 different comedies all in a row because I loved them. I used to watch the soaps. I used to watch the films. I used to watch the Christmas stuff. It was really, really good. And so... But as time has gone on, and it was political back then, don't get me wrong. I mean, back in the 90s, it was in bed with New Labour. In fact, it never really fell out of bed with New Labour, did it, really? But then, as the time went on, it became, I wouldn't say less relevant, but I do think that the time has come where it has to sustain itself within a marketplace. I actually think enough people, although I'm turned off by the BBC now and I haven't watched it for quite a while, I do watch bits and pieces here and there, but usually on catch-up. But I think it would survive in a marketplace. I do think there are enough people who like it to make it stand on its own 2 feet. You pays your money, you takes the choice. It's time to put it out there, along with everything else, and people can ascribe their budget to whichever they want to watch. I think the BBC would do OK, even if it's not to my taste.
Chloe, you are a young person. When I explained to my eldest son the licence fee, he laughed and thought I was making it up.
Yeah, sounds about right. This really shouldn't be a debate of whether the rate should rise from £159 to 200 quid. Of course, if it's going to be funded by a licence fee, that's going to have to go up in line with inflation. The debate really is, should the licence fee exist at all? And definitively, no, it should not. The licence fee is completely outdated. It is only fit for purpose for the world that we used to live in, where you had a TV that had, 4 or 5 channels, most, if not all of which were BBC. And as Aidan has pointed out, they have produced some fantastic content that you would, before we had social media, Netflix and whatnot, everyone would sit in front of the telly in the evening and watch BBC shows. You did get value for money. But in an age where, I rarely consume anything made by the BBC, and then I pay for Netflix, I pay for other subscriptions. Why on earth is it justified for the BBC to be funded by a licence fee and not have to do anything to be funded, whilst all the other channels like this one have to fight for their lives for advertising to just survive? It's just not justified at all.
OK, there is a flip side, a counterpoint to make, which is that the worst-case scenario is we lose the BBC and it's only the American giants like Disney Plus and Netflix and Amazon Prime who make the content that we're watching, and I think that would be a disaster. We've reached out to the BBC. They've said the government and the Beeb agreed a 6-year licence fee settlement in January 2022, which froze the licence fee for 2 years, with increases in line with inflation from 2024. As is usual practice, the government sets and confirms the cost of a licence each year. We await confirmation of this for 2024. And finally, the BBC have said, we will continue to focus on what we do best, working to deliver world-class content and providing great value for all of our audiences. Well, it's all about opinions. The BBC on trial. Do you think it's worth upwards of £200 a year? Let me know your thoughts. Mark at gbnews.com. But next up, Harry and Meghan's favourite journalist has written a tell-all book which threatens more chaos and bad headlines for King Charles and the royal family. We'll get the inside story from the Queen of US Royal Reporting, Kinsey Schofield, plus tomorrow's front pages. See you in 2.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Acquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? Well, if you... It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Greg, have I got time for emails? Go on then, it's a couple of corkers. The BBC, the licence fee within 5 years could be almost £200, according to the Office for Budget Responsibility. Judith says, hi, Mark. The BBC should be a subscription channel. It's ridiculous to force people to pay for something they don't watch. Daphne, hello, Daphne, how are you? What a lovely name that is, Daphne. Daphne says, licence payments are not worth it. The BB's anti-everything worth watching, including the totally untrustworthy news. This is from Daphne, a pensioner who can't afford it anyhow. Brilliant stuff. Look, I'll keep your opinions on the national airwaves very shortly, but it's time now for US News with the Queen of American showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. And Kinsey, let's talk about this rather dramatic new book coming out. It's called Endgame by Omid Scobie, who is a friend of the Sussexes, and I think it's quite unkind about Prince William.
Yeah, well, I mean, is it? One of my favorite Taylor Swift lyrics is play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. He's claiming that Prince William pushed him out of the royal rota and would not allow him to follow the Waleses around after, well, they weren't the Waleses at the time, but Prince William and Princess Kate wouldn't allow them to follow him around after the release of his book, Finding Freedom, because he felt like he was Prince Harry's lapdog. And, you know, I'd argue perhaps he was, Mark. I'm not sure that there's maybe 3 people in the world would disagree with that, Omid, Harry, and Meghan. But he claims that Prince William pushed him out and wouldn't allow him to cover them as closely as he used to after it was revealed that he did have a closer relationship to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle than, you know, they had alluded to during the release of Finding Freedom. You know, they initially lied about Harry and Meghan's participation in that book.
Indeed, we should point out that the couple do deny any close links with or influence on the work of Omid Scobie, but you're entitled to your view, Kinsey, particularly as one of the world's leading royal commentators. What do we think about...
It's not just me. Remember when Meghan went after the Daily Mail? It was Jason Kanoff. It was emails with Jason Kanoff that came out in that the Discovery, where they found emails from Jason Knauf and Meghan and Harry, where they did say, we want you to give Omid Scobie this information for this book. We want to have an influence on Finding Freedom. So it's not just my opinion, Mark, okay?
No, most definitely. Listen, Kinsey, how damaging could this book be? Because, I mean, they mentioned the race row again, the colour of the child. I don't think we need to go over old ground. Is there anything else in there that looks like a problem for King Charles?
I mean, The Sun is reporting that a second member of the extended royal household, not a member of the royal family, but a second member of the royal household made disparaging comments about Archie's skin tone. And this is allegedly revealed within a letter that Meghan Markle sent to King Charles. Neither individual is named in the book because Scobie claims he's worried about litigation. In the big scheme of things, PR-wise, I think people consider Harry and Meghan to be insecure, very sensitive, and they tend to exaggerate their claims. And I just don't think it would have the same effect today that these claims would have had a few years ago. I think that people are kind of over Harry and Meghan, if I'm being honest, over the complaining. And this is going to be, perhaps it's going to shake things up a little bit, but I don't think that this is, quote unquote, the end game for the royal family as much as Omid would like for us to think it is.
Yeah, I think a bit of self-aggrandizement at play there. And Harry and Meghan subject to the law of diminishing returns. You're not subject to any diminishing returns. You got a massive scoop this week. Tell me more.
Oh my gosh, Mark, this is wild. So every year, for the last 3 years, Kitson has put together a holiday hypocrisy window display. So it's not like Dior or Chanel, the beautiful, those beautiful visuals you have over there. But they call out public figures for hypocrisy every holiday season. And this year, Harry and Meghan are featured on it for their eco-hypocrisy. Mark, Kitson is the celebrity hotspot here in the States. It's the perfect gifts boutique. This is where all the celebrities used to go to be papped when they were desperate for that kind of attention. Paris Hilton, Kim Kardashian, walking out of the store with huge blue bags. So I know that it's going to drive the Duchess crazy that Hollywood A-listers are, going to pass by her photo, basically, as they run in to grab stocking stuffers this holiday season. This is going to be, I would say, very embarrassing for her.
And this is your exclusive footage. It's your story. It's got the country talking, hasn't it? People of the Year is the sort of window display at this gift shop next to a sign for violent crime, which actually looks jollier than Harry and Meghan.
Right. Well, what they're trying to point out is that Governor Gavin Newsom and, some of his lax policies has really made California such a disgrace in blatant comparison to Ron DeSantis's Florida. DeSantis is much more aggressive. He's much harder on crime than the state of California. So you are seeing an increase in violent crime. You are seeing an increase in crime in general here in California versus Florida. And Kitson's calling it out. They also called Gavin Newsom and Oprah out on the same window. Gavin Newsom for saying we made mistakes during the COVID crisis. And I know you know because we talked about this. We were masked up for years, in trouble if we took a walk around the block without our mask on. And then calling out Oprah Winfrey, one of the richest women in the world, for asking for those donations for Hawaii. So Kitson is pretty savage this holiday season, Mark.
I wish there was a branch here in the UK. Let's talk about Princess Diana, who is the apple of your eye. I know that she's one of the reasons why you became such a fan of the royal family, and some of her memorabilia up for sale. Is that right?
Isn't this so fun? Right here in Beverly Hills, it's a pastel pink blouse that was worn by Princess Di in her 1981 engagement portrait by Lord Snowdon. It's going up for auction here at Julian's Auction House in Beverly Hills. It's expected to fetch $200,000, so I'm obviously not in the running for it. This beautiful photo that they have of her in the blouse, it was taken for a 1981 issue of Vogue magazine by Princess Margaret's ex-husband, I believe believe the feature was called like Upcoming Beauty. They described the top as a poignant symbol of love, grace, and a timeless moment in history, which I obviously agree with. And in regards to the significance of this piece, the auction house says it represents the elegance of a woman who forever captured our hearts around the world. And all I have to say to that is amen.
Kinsey, listen, always a treat. Look forward to seeing you in a week's time. The queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Check out her website and podcast, which are both called To Die For Daily. Next up, we've got the newspaper front pages. And Greg, shall I tell them what we're doing at 10:40, or shall I keep it a surprise? OK, what we're going to do at 10:40 is we will react to the latest episode of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. There's a couple of minutes left on that programme. You don't need to turn over because it's all the boring stuff at the end. But at 10:40, we've got in the studio the king of the jungle himself, Christopher Biggins. So full reaction to the latest episode. Nigel has done a special Push Tucker trial. We'll let you know how he got on. So it's an I'm a Celebrity special from 10:40 tonight with loads and loads on Nigel Farage. But the papers are next. Don't go anywhere. Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's exactly 10:30, time for tomorrow's front pages. Sunday Telegraph, crackdown on charities that host extremists, and GCHQ investigates cyber attack on Royal Family Hospital. Also, relief for the reunited and agony for those forced to wait. A number of family members returned to Israel. Hostages held in Gaza by Hamas. Too many remain. Sunday Express now. Stop small boats or we're sunk. The Tories face electoral catastrophe unless it can stop migrant boats by polling day. This according to its own MPs. Sunday Mirror. Dad's relief as hostages freed. My darling girl is broken, but in one piece. The Observer next. Hostage deal on course after Hamas delay prompts crisis. And top migration advisor warns curbs will hit social care. The government's top immigration advisor has attacked plans to prevent overseas care workers from bringing family members to Britain, warning that to do so could be very dangerous for the social care sector. I was offered a lot of money to defect to reform, says Tory Deputy Chairman, that is Lee Anderson, GBNews star. They thought they were about to be executed, then freedom is the other headline relating to Israelis returning home. Daily Star Sunday, mum's bedroom ordeal, haunted by cigar-smoking ghost of Jimmy Savile. Now then, let's get reaction from my top pundits. I'm delighted to have with me tonight political commentator Chloe Dobbs, who became a big star during the pandemic, calling out the madness of lockdowns, although it's all about opinions, of course. Broadcaster and journalist, a good friend of mine, Aidan McGee, and bona fide showbiz royalty, actor and comedian and broadcaster Christopher Biggins. Folks, lots of stories to get through here. And what about this one in the Sunday Express, Chloe? Stop the small boats or we're sunk. Is this the policy and the issue which could just about save Rishi Sunak?
Yes, but I don't think there's much hope of him actually stopping the boats before the next election. We have had over recent weeks, we have had more and more signs of people being really outraged by this small boats crisis and the migration crisis in general. We had the ONS figures come out, 745,000 net migration. Now, that's not all small boats, but still people are very angry about this, and we saw what happened in Dublin. That was scary, right? Several
young people, including a 5-year-old, stabbed, and great uproar from a small number of people, which is then condemned by Leah Varadkar, the Taoiseach, as sort of hardcore right-wing extremist.
I know. What is it with just any time somebody pipes up on the street in some way, we just brand them as far-right thugs? I just don't understand it. We saw it on Armistice Day. How do you know exactly what the political opinions are of every single person you see pipe up?
The head of the Gardaí said it parroted exactly the same narrative. It's almost as if they were reading from the same page, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, you know, are they on the side of the British or are they on the side of people coming across illegally on small boats who go around stabbing children? I know it's slightly off topic, but people are really, really angry about what is basically just, you know, the invasion of our southern border. They have to get a grip on this. I don't think they will, and you know, consequently, they will probably use the next election, sadly.
But the boats are just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, in the context of the numbers we saw this week, I mean, it's a tiny number of people we're seeing invading our southern border.
So it's about 45,000 people expected to come in on small boats each year versus 745,000 net migration. The actual figure gross is about 1.2 million, which is bigger than the population size of any UK city aside from London. That's bigger than the size of Birmingham. So I don't know what we're supposed to do. You know, people call me racist for claiming that the migration numbers are too high. I don't think I'm racist to say that it's not possible to build a city the size of Birmingham or greater every single year. I mean, that's just not possible. We cannot cope with these numbers.
I've been saying for a long time now, Mark, and it was confirmed. It was no surprise to me when Suella Braverman released that statement after her resignation letter, and she basically poured scorn on Sunak by saying that there's no appetite to fix this problem. They're happy with the numbers as they are, and successive governments have been happy with the numbers where they are. Well, obviously they've gone up a bit, but the trend started in the late 90s. Certainly, they've gone up and up and up since then, and they're like that because the governments want them exactly where they are.
It's a political consensus.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I do.
Why are they so comfortable with these numbers? Because I mean, even culturally, it's a problem in terms of national identity, isn't it?
Well, it is, but I think from a conservative, an old school conservative perspective, I think there's a lot of FTSE 100 influence in there. A lot of these companies populate their firms with workers at that level, so they pay the minimum wage, sometimes even less, and that's a good way of getting people in to work in central London or to work in big cities at a small price that maybe, a small wage rather, that maybe they wouldn't have done, or people who would have done that job maybe 20, 30 years ago, not now prepared to do it. And I think it's an ideological thing when it comes to the left. I think they're all in on it, and for different reasons, it results in the same thing, and that's the numbers going up every single year.
But Biggins, the Observer, reports that the country's top migration advisor says that we need these people, for example, to do social care. That's looking after pensioners, people with dementia and all the rest of it. We need them.
Well, I think I agree with the Observer articles. I think we do need them, and they're very important at this particular stage of people's lives when they do need help, mentally and physically. You know, people need to be bathed, showered, and need to have take their medication. They need to be looked after. And they, of course, as we're living longer and longer, you know, we increasingly need more of these people.
Although the point being made, Christopher, about the care sector is that if the government clamped down on relatives coming along on a visa for social care, they're going to clamp down on that, but this advisor says that will reduce the number of people coming. But surely it's unreasonable to expect to bring family members.
Not unreasonable at all. I mean, surely that's very important. You don't want to come on your own.
Well, I don't know, Aidan. I think that this is what inflates the figures, isn't it? Family members.
So I've got a little bit of knowledge about this. It's a slightly different thing, but when I get applications for my student properties, for example, in places like Stoke-on-Trent, Preston, elsewhere, I often get an individual applying on a student visa, but they're bringing family. Now, I can't fit them in because I'm talking about 3 or 4 bedroom units here. They want to rent the whole place as a family. It's not really viable from a business point of view for me, but I'm getting applications probably whenever a room comes available, they think it's a house, and so they contact me and say, OK, can you fit a family in? That happens all the time, and it's not the same person doing it, it's different names, and word spreads around. It's not a myth.
OK. Chloe, I'll get to more of your thoughts shortly, but next up, let me tell you, a big reaction to what's been happening in the jungle. That's right, I'm a Celebrity is now drawing to a close this evening. Nigel has been doing a bush tucker trial. I'll let you know about his performance and how he's been coming across tonight. Full I'm a Celebrity reaction next.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GBNews.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only three people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, on Mark Dolan tonight, I will give you the Nigel Farage I'm a Celebrity guarantee, which is that whenever we're on air, when I'm a Celebrity finishes, you'll get instant reaction and analysis. And tonight we're going to do that because it's I'm a Celeb Day 7 and they've just come off air. And it was very exciting, actually. GB News star Nigel Farage teamed up with former world champion boxer Tony Bellew. Here's a snippet of what happened.
Go on, Nigel.
Go on.
Here we go. Watch him.
Watch him.
Come on.
Now, you know, when you're ready, same again, please.
Well done, Nigel. Go on, mate. You can do it, mate.
Look at him go! He's a machine! Oh, Nigel!
Well done.
Look at that! Now, they were drinking disgusting slime full of snails and snakes and God knows what else, but Nigel is such a pro, he made it look like a pint of old speckled hen, didn't it? Looked like he was at his favourite local. Well, Nigel and Tony drank all 6 drinks to win a full 12 stars for the camp. So who better to analyse Nigel's performance tonight, and since he entered the jungle, than the King of the Jungle himself, 2007 winner, Christopher Biggins. And King of the Jungle is like President of the United States. Even when you're out, you're still the king, aren't you?
Still the king, and I won't go in again because I'd be fearful of losing the title.
Correct. Correct.
I wouldn't want to do that. I mean, also in my day, it was much easier. But we did have those drinks and that terrible thing. I remember when I had to eat a kangaroo's penis, I said, I've had worse things in my mouth. But it was, everything was disgusting, but now it's even more disgusting. And I'm a great fan of Nigel's. I think he's terrific. And he's doing exactly what he should be doing, is actually doing everything. Because you've got to remember, nothing is going to kill you.
He doesn't seem fazed, does he, at all?
What?
He doesn't seem fazed.
No, but he's right. That's exactly what you should think. I mean, it is disgusting, some of the things you have to do. And get poured over you and eat and all sorts of things and drink. So it's not easy.
Is Nigel getting it right so far? How's he coming across?
I think he's coming across brilliantly. I mean, I really do. I mean, I just think he's... Everything about him, I just love him. I think he's fantastic. I also love the fact that he's actually being very clean. And it's important when you're in there because you do get so filthy and all those things poured over you. And he's having a bath, he's having a shower, showing his bottom. And I think that's absolutely right. I didn't. I used my boxers, and I used to go in like that around with the boxers still on because I wasn't going to show anything that I got.
Smooth things around.
Smooth things around, exactly. But it is, you know, you have to be very clean because it's very important because you do come out smelling appallingly. Yeah. And the first thing you do when you get to the Versace Hotel is have a shower and a bath.
Nigel, he looks great. I mean, he looks well. He doesn't look like he's sleep deprived or hasn't eaten much in the last 7 days. And would you be in a position to rate his bum out of 10?
Yes, I'd probably say 6.
OK. There you go. Not bad for a man of middle age, let's be honest, Aidan.
No, exactly.
Aidan, the plan for Nigel, I spoke to him before he went into the jungle, was to reach out to a younger audience to watch I'm a Celebrity. Is that working?
Yeah, I think it's working. I mean, I think it's no surprise to me that he's done well in there. I met him for the first time in this very building about 2.5 years ago, and I was a bit wary because, you know, I admired him from afar, and if they say, you know, maybe you might be disappointed when you meet them in person. He took a bit of a while to kind of trust me in a way, I would say, because he's probably, I mean, he's got a security detail 6 days a week. You know, I actually said to him, I said, do you regret going into what you did, you know, 30 odd years ago whenever you took the decision to go into politics? He said, no, I believed in what I was doing. That was good enough for me, but it took me a little while to get to know him. And then I was on his show a few times, and then things started thawing a little bit. But this is a different challenge because he has to go and make an impression straight away. There's no room for any barriers, there's no room for any walls to be knocked down.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's going in there as... charisma is a quality lacking in the modern generation of politicians, and he has got it in abundance, let me tell you.
Has he
I
made
don't think
any...
he'll win.
What?
I don't think he'll win.
You don't know. Why won't Nigel win?
Because I think there are other people in there who will win, like Josie.
There's some good people in there.
There are some very good people.
And what gives Josie the edge over Nigel?
Josie is, you see, people come to me for advice. When they're going into the jungle, they come and say, what is the, what do you suggest I do? And I always say to them, be yourself.
Yes.
And that is the major, because you're in there for 3 weeks. If you start going in as a character, you lose your way.
Remember the first or second series of Big Brother, you had Nasty Nick.
Yeah.
Nick Bateman trying to play the game, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was trying to be somebody he wasn't.
You're right.
And eventually he got unstuck, came unstuck, and about a year later he's writing a column in the Express with me. So that's how far.
Yes, I know that Ian Wright is a wonderful football hero, an Arsenal and England legend, but I think a couple of times he showed a sort of slightly impatient side, didn't he, when he was in the jungle, and it didn't impress people.
Yeah, it looked a little bit contrived as well. I think Nigel Benn was a little bit like that as well. I think he was in it with Christine Hamilton actually in about 2005. So you see people trying to play the game, and you see it in all reality shows actually, and that defeats the object of the whole thing because it's not reality.
And also, you are completely in the hands of the editors.
Is that right?
Unbelievably, because some people never get a look in.
Yeah.
You know, they're just there as a sort of furnishings. And then it's that they concentrate on the people that they think are going to be attractive to the audience.
Didn't Wayne Sleep win it just by not actually being part of?
No, I don't think he did he?
Or maybe
I think it might have gone quite far. I can't remember if he became king. Yeah. Chloe, your verdict on I'm a Celebrity this year, is it a good watch?
Yeah, I don't normally watch it, but I have been very excited to see Nigel on it. I have to say, when I was watching your show last night, Mark, and my computer screen completely froze at the moment that you were showing the clip of Nigel in the bathtub. But I saw him eating those disgusting pizzas, and I was there squirming just watching it, and he just doesn't care. He just powers through. I have so much more respect for him now. I had a lot of respect before.
Better than 6 out of 10, do you think?
6 out of 10.
Yeah.
Chris Bottom.
That's
I didn't see the actual. I saw him laying in the bath, and but I didn't see the bum.
I think it's an 8.
You know what's interesting there? There's a girl in there I've never heard of, Nella.
Yeah.
And she really made me laugh when she came on. Then suddenly,
she
got
attacked Nigel.
Yes, well, not attacked Nigel. First of all, she attacked the Frenchman.
Yeah,
in a very, very bad way.
Well, yeah, Greg, see if you can grab any of that footage with Nella and Nigel, because it is quite compelling. So this lady, Nella Rose, is that what she's called?
Yeah.
She's become something of a sort of pantomime villain on the show.
Yeah.
But she's exactly Biggins what ITV want, which is somebody that creates a bit of drama. She's definitely achieving that.
Absolutely. And now she's back talking to her, the person that she hated.
Fred Syriac.
Fred Syriac, that's right. Now, and then, of course, I thought that he handled it brilliantly, Nigel.
I think that he did, and I think that it's opportunities like that where he really shows to that younger audience that this isn't some crazy, racist, bigoted individual, and he actually gets a chance to show himself to be the same normal person. Even if they don't agree with his point at the end of the day, they see that he's more reasonable. Yeah. He's not some crazy racist.
You can do that in the jungle as well, I think, in a way that you can't do that on the street.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you start doing that on the street, having an argument with someone on the tube or on the pavement or whatever, you have someone going around throwing objects and eggs and goodness knows what else.
And he's so articulate.
He's a very articulate guy. The Telegraph is saying they gave the show 2 stars today in their paper, and they said it's boring, there's not enough Nigel, and they don't think, outside of Nigel and perhaps Nella, that it's a vintage year.
Do they have a mark for his bottom as well?
Well,
how many stars for that?
That would take it up to 6 stars, wouldn't it? But, I mean, do we think... Is it popping? Some people are saying there isn't enough Nigel on the show.
No, possibly. I mean, look, I think the show is... prior to this, I would have said the format was kind of... Not dying a death, but you get tired of things after a while, don't you? But I think, he's...
Been on a long time.
Not just Nigel. I think, whatever we think of Nella Rose... You know, I think she's watchable. She annoys us, but we watch. It's her we're talking about.
Indeed. The other thing, the great scene I thought that reflected well on Nigel was the Bush-Tucker trial on, I think it was the second evening, with Nella. They both had to eat disgusting food.
The pizzas.
The pizzas.
Yeah, I watched that.
He showed his character there that he was very supportive of Nella, really encouraged her.
Yeah, not only was he super tough-headed on getting through his own pizzas, he was giving her countdowns, he was giving her words of affirmation. I was thinking after that, you know, Nigel should be a motivational speaker instead.
Well, yes, let's now look, we've just got footage of this argument that Nigel had with Nella Rose. And what happened there, interestingly, Biggins, is that she said that, why does everyone hate you?
Yes.
Or why do all black people hate you? And he said, you'd be surprised, they don't. And then he said that he goes to South London. And she said, what are you doing in South London? I don't know if you saw that episode.
I did.
But I mean, in a way, it was a sort of microcosm of how mad the conversation around immigration is and how, I've got to say, ill-informed some people are.
Yeah. Very ill-informed. Certainly Nella was. I mean, I think Nella was quite surprised by the outcome of that conversation that she had with him. And I think she was taken aback in a way. But I think that's what's great. I mean, that is, and I think there's not enough of that in the series. I think it may be towards the end of its life in a way.
Possibly. Is that right? How far do you think I'm a Celeb could go? Do you think like 1 or 2 series left? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, yes, I think probably yes.
And also the talent are getting a bit too expensive.
Oh, well, I mean, $1.5 million, if that's right, they're paying Nigel.
That's half what you got, isn't it?
Yeah.
Drinks are on Biggins.
Yes.
Greg, have we got time for Headline Heroes? OK, brilliant. Listen, let's now have a look at the Headline Heroes and back page zeros of the day. And Chloe, who's your headline hero?
It's actually Boris today for insisting that we must raise the salary threshold for non-EU workers to 40,000 from 26. You know, usually when we see changes and this sort of thing, it would be from 26 to 28 or something like that. He's saying, nope, hard line, needs to be 40.
So it means you can only come to the country if you're going to make 40 grand or more.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to add to this country. It's clear 745,000 net migration is out of control. We need strict measures now, and Boris is pushing the government on this.
Aidan, your headline hero.
It's a gentleman by the name of Ciao Benizio. He is the delivery driver, Deliveroo driver to be more specific. Other brands are available, of course. He fought off the attacker in Dublin this week and proved that not all immigrants are out to cause trouble for the people of Ireland, which is the narrative that's been spun a little bit this week. But he fought back, and I think he did the country proud.
What a wonderful hero. Your headline hero, Biggins.
Nigel Farage's bottom.
Too right. 10 out of 10. And
that's
there
a cheeky
it is.
choice.
I mean, I think for a man in his mid to late 50s. 58, is that right?
Yeah, it looks good.
It's not shoddy, is it?
No.
And he's quite comfortable in the buff.
Yeah, absolutely.
He doesn't hide anything from viewers or listeners. And I can't unsee that image now. Back page zeros. Who's yours, Chloe?
David Cameron. He is causing division already by saying, oh, the UK needs closer ties with the EU. He's trying to re-spark the Brexit debate. Look, if you're going to come back into government, just do your job. Don't stir up division. Don't start trying to bring up Brexit
William Hague shtick, isn't it?
Yeah, we need the Tories to be united more than ever at the moment. Our biggest problem is that we are always divided, and he's coming in and causing more division. He's not helping at all. I'm really unimpressed by this.
There you go. Your back page zero, Aidan?
We mentioned him about half an hour ago, I think, Leo Varadkar, the Irish Taoiseach. Yeah. It's very rare that I would say of anyone that they need to be ashamed of themselves, but even a politician, a senior politician, but his failure to capture the mood, given everything that was happening within his country, right on his doorstep, and instead he took the opportunity to make the point that, well, you know, basically we're right, you know, the problems that you think are happening aren't really happening, it's just a problem with the far right. I thought he embarrassed himself.
Yeah, gaslighting the public, and more focus on people rioting than the original crime, which was the stabbing of several people, including a 5-year-old child.
There were people on social media saying, what actually happened? What's the family? Because everyone was talking about something else. It was a chance for the Taoiseach to seize the nub of the story there, and he completely ignored it and chose his own selfish ends.
OK, something, of course, we will all stress is that we condemn wholeheartedly the violence we saw in the aftermath.
Absolutely.
But for people to be fed up and not happy is an important debate to be had. Biggins, briefly, if you can, your back page 0.
Sadiq Khan, he's ruined my or is ruining my fabulous city. I love it, and I'm thinking of getting out of it because of him. And it's just a nightmare. Everything is a nightmare. Getting here tonight was a nightmare.
Yeah.
Getting home will be a nightmare.
I've been giving him advice on property, so I know that he's serious about getting out.
Yeah, exactly.
Biggins, only a couple of seconds. Jimmy Savile, front page of the Star Sunday.
Yes,
your reaction.
Yes, this is a mum's bedroom ordeal. She's haunted by the cigar-smoking ghost of Jimmy Savile. I sadly met him on a couple of occasions, and if I think about it, I can bring back the smell of the cigar and the nylon that he used to wear. All those shell suits were nylon, and it was disgusting, as he was.
There you go. Listen, loved my pundits tonight. Loved your company as well. Well done, Lottie, Greg and Josh. And thanks for your emails. I can't do the show without you. I'll see you tomorrow at 9. Headliners is next.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. I'm Craig Snell. Well, tonight's going to be another dry and cold and frosty one for most of us. A bit of a change out towards the west, and that's all courtesy of this weather front. That's just going to bring in some cloud and rain as the night goes on. But with high pressure generally in charge across much of the UK, clear skies, it's a perfect recipe for a widely frosty night across the UK. Still a bit of a breeze down the eastern seaboard, so here actually temperatures will just stay just above freeze, and then later on, as we start to see this cloud and rain move in, temperatures will recover out towards the west. So as we start Sunday morning, we could just see a few mist and freezing fog patches around, but they will quickly clear. And we'll just start to see this area of cloud and rain just gradually spread its way a little bit further eastward. So sunshine turning increasingly hazy across many eastern areas, but staying largely dry here as the day goes on. Best of the sunshine up across parts of northern and eastern Scotland, but the far north actually just seeing a few outbreaks of rain. Temperatures in the west a little bit higher than they will be today, but still on the cold side for the time of year. Into Monday, a bit of a grey, damp start across many parts of the UK. Some sunshine across western Scotland and Northern Ireland. That will spread its way a little bit further southwards as the day goes on, but still feeling fairly cold, and that cold theme will continue as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday, but it will turn a little bit drier and brighter.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Very good evening to you. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Emily Hand, a 9-year-old Irish-Israeli girl, is amongst 17 hostages released by Hamas after 50 days in captivity. 13 Israelis, 6 women and 7 children, along with 4 Thai nationals, were carried out of Gaza on board Red Cross vehicles through the Rafah border crossing. The IDF says the released hostages are now in Israel and on their way to hospital, where they'll be reunited with their families. In exchange, 39 Palestinians have been freed from a prison in the West Bank. A source close to the discussions says 33 children and 6 women make up that number. It comes on day 2 of a 4-day pause in fighting. Meanwhile, a 4-year-old girl released on Friday after being held captive by Hamas told her father she dreamed of coming home. Raz Asher, her 2-year-old sister Aviv, and her mother Doron were released and reunited with Yoni Asher on Friday in the first stage of the Israel-Hamas deal. 24 hostages were freed in total yesterday, 13 Israelis and 11 Thai nationals. Doctors say they've been responding well to medical treatment. The Met Police has arrested 18 people during pro-Palestinian protests in London. 5 on suspicion of inciting or distributing material likely to stir up racial hatred, and 2 on suspicion of supporting a prescribed terrorist organisation. The arrest took place as tens of thousands of people marched through central London calling for a ceasefire. Police handed out leaflets to provide absolute clarity on what will be deemed an offence. The former police officer convicted of murdering George Floyd needed life-saving treatment after he was stabbed at a prison in Arizona. Derek Chauvin survived the attack by another inmate but was rushed to hospital and has been left seriously injured. It comes days after the Supreme Court rejected his appeal. The 47-year-old argued he hadn't received a fair trial. Mr. Chauvin is currently serving multiple sentences for George Floyd's death in 2020, which led to widespread protests against police brutality and racism. Well, this is GB News. We're live across the UK. That's it for the moment. Now it is time for headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Stephen Allen. Joining me tonight are 2 top comedians and our very own migrant crisis. It's Luke Schaefer and Nicholas DeSantos. Gentlemen, we are surely the best dressed lineup that you get on this gig, isn't it?
Well, speaking for myself,